Hey everyone, it's been a while since I made one of these videos. I started streaming earlier this year, so it's been a game changer for my content. Like, I had to really make use of my awful memory to write about all the games I played. So yeah, my thoughts might be all over the place. Almost everything in this video is about titles that I've played on stream, but I've played a few of them on my own too. Here's hoping you find a game you're interested in after you finish watching. Let's get on with the video. First is the Gunk. I was looking for something short but interesting to stream when I came across this game. The Gunk is about Ronnie, who's part of two space haulers who land on an untouched planet. When she drops down to explore it, she discovers that the place is full of materials and some mysterious gunk that seems to be alive. But after it's vacuumed away, life starts restoring in the area. Ronnie's curiosity takes over, so she starts trying to heal the planet and discover what the gunk actually is. The whole game plays like a linear puzzle platformer, so you'll be scanning new things that you find and vacuuming materials and gunk using Ronnie's power glove. The glove itself can be upgraded with the materials you get, but apart from the ones needed for the main story, I thought some of them were unnecessary since most of the game was really easy. It was oddly relaxing to play, almost like a sci-fi version of a game like Power Wash Simulator. Like, my favorite part of the game was vacuuming all the gunk, and seeing the planet go from being a barren wasteland to a colorful green environment. The two main characters were entertaining too. They had such good chemistry together, and almost every conversation they had felt realistic, since they went through some turbulent moments in the game that really tested their relationship. The story though, the planet's secrets drew me in, but most of the game was just okay for me. The ending was not that great too, but I was still satisfied since the gunk's only like 4 to 5 hours long. I recommend the Gunk only if you like short games with an ending that's alright. If you're interested in it, it's on Xbox consoles and PC. Next is Homestead Arcana. I like farming sims and cozy games in general, so this instantly caught my attention. I mean, you can play as a witch. Now the story, I didn't pay too much attention to it, to be honest, but you basically create your own witch, farm crops, and survive poisonous areas. Yeah, it's not a typical farming game. The places surrounding the range are filled with corruption known as miasma, so your ultimate goal is to get rid of it all. Just like other farming sims, you can gather materials, make crafting stations, and decorate your homestead. Growing plants was unique though, since you can either water the plants and wait for them to grow, or use your magic to speed things up. The only thing I didn't like about it was that it got tedious to use magic on the plants. Now, exploring the miasma was both fun and stressful since you have limited time before your mask runs out of air, which slowly decreases your HP. To top it all off, there are hostile creatures that you gotta avoid, and you have to manage your hunger meter. It's funny because the game felt like it had two different sides to it, cozy and almost survival horror. But as much as I liked the game early on, it started to feel like a slog after a few hours. Like, there's a lot more world building and lore throughout Homestead Arcana, but I thought it was presented in a really boring way. The dialogue was bland, and I didn't care about any of the notes I found. The gameplay loop was tedious and repetitive too. After I cleared the miasma in the first area, I decided to just stop playing. I realized that I'll just have to do the same thing over and over again for each region, except it would be more difficult and time-consuming. I don't know if I can recommend this game, but if you want to try it out, it's on Xbox consoles and PC. The third game's Cuphead, The Delicious Last Course. This one's DLC for the main game, which I finished a long time ago. I nearly lost my sanity trying to finish Cuphead back then, so I was looking forward to fighting new bosses that'll drain my mental state all over again. In The Delicious Last Course, Cuphead and Mugman go to a far-off island to talk to legendary Chalice. She gives Mugman a cookie, which lets her swap bodies with him, turning him into a spirit while she gets to be in the real world. This is basically a mechanic that lets you play as Chalice in the actual game. But anyway, the effects of the cookie are brief in the story, so they seek out ingredients for the Wonder Chart, which will give Chalice the chance to completely come back to life. The catch is, the ingredients are all held by the game's bosses, so it gives you the motive to fight them all. Oh, and for those unfamiliar with the main game, it plays like a platformer with gorgeous old-school cartoon visuals, and it's also really hard. So yeah, the DLC bosses are definitely Cuphead levels of bosses. They're challenging, and they're just as unique and well-made like the main game's enemies. Every boss has their own unique phases and animations as you slowly chip at their health using your finger gun and special abilities. As much as I like Cuphead and Mugman, I love playing as Chalice. She made the game so much easier for me since she can double jump and dodge roll. Oh, and she had extra health too, which really saved me in a lot of fights. And just like the first game, you can get new abilities and weapons that you can swap to for every boss fight. There's not much I can say about the game since it has everything that Cuphead had. Cool animations, challenging bosses, and lots of frantic moments. As difficult as it was to fight them, every death in the game was a learning experience, and it was so satisfying and stress relieving when I managed to beat one boss after being stuck for an hour or so. I recommend both Cuphead and the delicious last course if you like difficult games. Cuphead and its DLC are available on every platform. The fourth game is Cooking Simulator. I don't think I need to explain what this game is about, but I'm going to do it anyway. You get orders, gather ingredients, cook food, and then serve them to customers. It's simple, but I don't know how to feel about this game. I played only an hour and 30 minutes, and I could already feel my sanity draining really fast. I felt like I was fighting for my life with every dish I had to cook, since everything had to have exact measurements and very specific steps. I know the restaurant has to maintain a standard, but it was not very fun to play. It also got tedious and repetitive really fast, especially when I had to gather the same ingredients and cook it all over again. I think the only thing I enjoyed about the whole thing was the physics, especially when I was streaming the game. To those of you who watched me stream this, you saw all the chaos that unfolded. My kitchen was so messy, and there were utensils and ingredients all over the place. It was only when I recorded footage for this video that I learned to place things properly on the counters. I still made a mess in the end, but it was way better than the first time I played. I don't recommend playing this game, but if you want some chaos in your life, Cooking Simulator is on every platform. Next is It Takes Two. I've played and loved the previous games by Joseph Fares, Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons, and A Way Out, so I had high expectations for this game. It didn't disappoint, at least until the last quarter of the game, but I'll get into that later. It Takes Two is about Cody and May, a married couple who plan on getting a divorce. Their daughter finds out and makes dolls that resemble her parents, pretending that they're making up and becoming friends instead. She ends up crying, and her teardrops end up falling on the dolls, which transfers her parents' souls into them. When Cody and May wake up as the dolls, they freak out, of course, and then they start working together to figure out how to get back into their original bodies. The whole game's a split-screen co-op experience, so it literally takes two. But yeah, I played this with my boyfriend, and it was an incredibly fun experience. Cody and May have different abilities in every level, so you have to work together with your partner in order to solve puzzles and get through different areas. I can't even describe just how amazing It Takes Two is. The game's so creative since it constantly switches mechanics and gameplay. Even the areas in the game are packed with so much detail, and since the game is in the perspective of little dolls, the whole world was one big playground. I especially loved the sections of the game that had toys, snow globes, and ball pits, since it really captured that fun and sense of wonder that I had as a kid. My boyfriend and I had a blast working together, playing minigames and just experiencing the game. Now, the reason why I dropped It Takes Two towards the end was because of the story. I know it's supposed to be a family-friendly game, but it felt a little too simplistic for the main character's marriage problems to be repaired by a talking self-help book and a magical adventure. It didn't help that the dialogue and the style of the game felt more like a light-hearted Pixar movie, with constant jokes and all. It was charming at first, but I got really bored towards the final hours of the game, especially since it felt like the story was really getting dragged out. But gameplay-wise, it's the most fun and creative co-op game that I've ever played so far, and I highly recommend the game. It Takes Two is on every platform. Now the next game is Bramble, the Mountain King. I've seen clips of this game online a couple of months ago, and I thought it looked really cool. When I saw that it was on Game Pass, I decided to try it out myself. So in Bramble, you play as a little boy who wakes up in the middle of the night to find that his sister has gone missing. He decides to sneak out of his house to search for her in the forest, and well, reality starts to blend with fiction, I think? A lot of stuff that happens in the game feels like a really dark fairy tale, with Nordic fables scattered throughout its world. Bramble is a very linear game that plays like a 3D platformer, so you'll be solving puzzles, jumping on platforms, and climbing a lot. It reminded me of Little Nightmares, since you play as a kid who has to go through some pretty horrific stuff. Though the difference with Bramble is that it isn't always dark and scary. Well, actually, it can be scary even when it's daytime in the game. But anyway, I finished Bramble in 4 to 5 hours, but during that time, I went through so many different environments and beat a lot of bosses. I thought the bosses themselves were one of the highlights of the game. Most of them are beaten by platforming and solving puzzles, but they all had their own mechanics and some really creative sections. Their fights were very forgiving too. Whenever I died in them, the checkpoints were never too far away, so I didn't have to restart the whole fight again. Oh, and I love their backstories. Every boss had their own little storybook that you could read before or after their battles. Seeing their stories gave more depth to their characters and the actual fights. Now, I think the only negative things about Bramble for me were the beginning and the end, and the character models. Yeah, some of the character models, like the main character, looked really uncanny. The environments and bosses were great though. It's just, he was the only thing that I could never get over. Anyway, the beginning of the game, Bramble starts off really slow, so it wasn't capturing my interest at all for the first 30 minutes, but it started to really kick off after that, at least all the way until the ending. I thought it was really underwhelming since I was expecting a bigger payoff, but despite that, I recommend Bramble. If you want to try it yourself, I think it's available on every platform. The 7th game is Calico. This game lets you create your own character and manage a cat cafe, though I'd say that Calico's more like Animal Crossing than a cat cafe game. You just have to go around an island, help villagers, and kidnap animals. Yeah, I did that a lot. The game lets you interact with almost every animal that you find. You can pick them up, play with them, or send them to your cat cafe. I personally just claimed as much of them as I could. I even stole some of the villagers' pets by accident. Now, the actual quests were not interesting. In fact, I skipped most of the dialogue because it just really bored me. Every character gave fetch quests, so I just had to travel to different parts of the map to get an item or to complete another task. Completing certain quests unlock other parts of the island where different characters and animals live, making the gameplay loop start again. The actual game is very janky, but it's just so charming and cute that I didn't mind it most of the time. There's so much customization in Calico that it became very overwhelming. You can add patterns to your clothes and cafe, put all kinds of furniture, and just really design things the way you want. While I did quests to gain rewards and advance the story, I had fun just messing around with the animals and playing Calico's cooking minigame. Making food and drink was just so addicting. It felt like a Cooking Mama segment, but with more fantasy stuff involved. But yeah, Calico was a really fun game overall. It took me maybe over 8 hours to beat on stream. I recommend it if you don't mind some jankiness with its charm. Calico is on almost every platform, I think. Finally, we have Palia. I was going to talk about my thoughts on its closed beta, but I took way too long to make this video, so it's an open beta now. But yeah, this game took my entire weekend when I got closed beta access. It was just so much fun. Palia tells the story of a world where humanity disappeared for thousands of years until, well, they started appearing again. How did that happen? I don't know, since Palia is a very new free-to-play life sim MMO. It felt like a dream when I first heard about this game, honestly. I love cozy single-player games, and I've always loved things like cooking and fishing and other MMOs. When I learned that Palia was an MMO and it was going to focus on life sim elements, I couldn't wait to play it. Everything about the game was just so relaxing, and it kept me busy doing all kinds of activities. You can go fishing, gardening, catch bugs, and hunt animals. The characters in the game are really sweet too. They feel more animated compared to NPCs from other MMOs. They all have unique character designs, personalities, and special animations when you talk to them. The quests they give are typical fetch quests, of course, but it always felt really fun to do them because of the rewards, and well, just being able to befriend the NPCs, or romance them. You can craft, build, and decorate your house too. Palia borrows a lot of ideas and mechanics from single-player farming games and incorporates them in an MMO setting, which leads to some of the game's biggest problems right now. Like, yeah, you can see other players, hunt and share resources, cook with friends, and well, that's it really. The multiplayer aspects of Palia are lacking, which is really weird since, you know, the game's supposed to be an MMO. You can't even trade with other players, not even your friends. You have to request items that you've previously owned in order for someone else to give them to you. The game lacks emotes too. Oh, and you can't sit on chairs and interact with furniture, which I think is really weird for an MMO that's life sim focused. Another thing that bothered me was the game's premium store. Like, wow. I get that the game's free to play, but the prices for the exclusive clothes in the game are insane. It's literally enough to buy entire games, and just recently they released an update that adds pets to the game, only if you buy premium currency. Yeah, not even one pet can be bought with in-game money. I still love Palia though, and I highly recommend it to anyone who enjoys cozy games. I'm still drawn to it after it consumed over 2 days of my life. It's just, I've been cautious about it being free to play, even before it came out. I'm glad that there's no way to pay real money to speed up crafting and other activities in the game, but the crazy prices for the premium store are painful to look at. I really hope that Palia doesn't stick with the current prices, and I hope it gets way more content updates following up to its full release at the end of this year. Like, it's just in open beta right now, but I do think that it has the foundation of something really special. As long as it gets more content, and it lets people buy premium stuff for more reasonable prices. The open beta is only on PC right now, but Palia will be on the Switch too once it releases. Let me know what you thought about the video, and thank you to my patrons at Patreon for supporting my channel. Wow, this video was longer than I expected, and I didn't even include the horror games I've played on stream. I don't have much to say, so thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Oh, and thank you to everyone who tuned into my streams.